Welcome back to the Win with Dice podcast, a podcast featuring members of the Win with Dice team, and for the second week in a row, a special guest. Joining me is Ramon.
Hey guys.
And this week's guest, Ikiryo.
Pleasure to meet you all.
So, in a continuation of what we've been calling Lancer Month Part 2, with various subtitles.
The Reckoning, I think Shaka mentioned last week.
Yeah, I suggested Onic Boogaloo, which was very quickly shot down. Deservedly so. We are this week talking about Field Guide Liminal Space, as we've been talking to other supplement writers and people in the Lancer community. Of course, Lancer is something we've talked about a whole lot on the show, and it's something that people usually enjoy listening to, so we're excited to get into it with more people from the community itself, which has been very inviting and welcoming from what I've seen.
Yeah, and this is your first episode to the podcast. This is the Win with Dice podcast, a podcast all about running tabletop RPGs. Calvin and I play in a bunch of games. We run a bunch of games. We try to take a casual approach to the GMing of those games and talking about it. So we just want to have a conversation, and hopefully from listening to it, we can pass on some knowledge to you guys. So jumping to the other side of the screen doesn't seem that hard or bad or scary or whatever. Yeah,
all that stuff. Especially if you want to start playing Lancer this year, or running Lancer, as I will be.
Best of luck to you with that.
Yeah, I'm still figuring out some mechanical stuff, but that's part of I'm excited to talk to a whole lot of people, is to get their ideas and how they like to build things, and hopefully it'll help me build a simple one-shot, because I have scrapped at least a dozen ideas.
Yeah.
Weirdly enough, one of the best things Lancer does for new GMs is that it doesn't make player characters and NPCs use the same back-end stuff. Mm-hmm. So that you don't have, this person is a player character. They are designed to be here for, 4 to 5 fights. This person is an NPC. They are designed to be here for one battle and have the resources of a character who would be here for 4 to 5 fights, like some games do.
Yeah. I definitely am not a big fan of that. I think that your bad guys need to just show up, get slapped around, and get out the way, right? I don't need to have to figure out a bunch of math if my players are going to be able to defeat this thing. I wanna know that it's just gonna work out, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I've had that problem before with some Pathfinder stuff. I'm putting a whole list of spells on a character that's not gonna last long enough to use half of them.
Yeah, that is a little bit of a bugbear of mine with especially games that do have a spell slot system where they'll go, here is a spellcaster enemy. That means they are going to be significantly scarier than anyone who's a class that did not bring limited resources.
Yeah. Or even they'll jack up the spellcaster with a bunch of spells that you'll never use, right? I would rather it be okay, these are the kill spells, right? If you want to really just mess up somebody. And then these are, if this person's an NPC, these are the laundry list of spells that they could possibly have, or abilities. I'd rather it be vague and useful than specific and useless, right?
I will warn you, I am actually a bit of a D&D 4th Ed fan, and I did enjoy D&D 4th Ed going, look, NPCs know whatever non-combat spells they need to know.
Oh, yeah. No, I just think that, I could go into D&D 4th a while. I definitely bounced off of it. That was mostly on the part of going from a 3.5, not even 3.5. It's just I think 4th was my first introduction to D&D, and it wasn't what I was expecting.
That's fair. I sort of bring up 4th Ed because Lancer has a surprising amount of 4th Ed bones to it.
Honestly, I will take apart everything from 4th Ed and put it into whatever system, because they just had the idea of they have cool abilities, right? It's always they funnel down the game design to the cool abilities, and I want to have those really nice chunks of cool abilities I put to a creature and just be this thing is unique, this thing's cool, or this thing has the functionalities of being a kobold, and here's all it's built in. It's not just lore nonsense. It's just
I am a huge sucker for anytime you get a good synergy between the rules and the fluff.
Yes. If I could...
Where you can go, this feels like what it's supposed to be.
Oh, yeah. Right there with you, man. Capital S synergy is me. Like... but yeah, enough about all that nonsense. We should probably get into the show.
Yeah, we're getting into a pretty good discussion here. We almost forgot to get into... I'm really excited for this episode, by the way, just from that vibe already. But we forgot to get to the most important part of the show, of course, the Win with Dice Weekly GM Tip of the Week.
Yes, the Win with Dice Weekly GM Tip of the Week. Totally brought by Rahman and totally thought of beforehand, obviously.
I mean, we can just use this discussion we just had, unless you have a specific thing for this week.
Well, I mean, we always champion on the channel just, take what you want from systems and just leave the rest. And, I think that like once a book or a system or supplement or whatever's in your hands, it's yours, so you can do whatever you want with. The creator isn't over your shoulder telling you what to do. I think I played recently. It's totally different from this, but like I played recently. I'm trying to remember what the game was because I just started doing it. I think it's called Hearts. What is this game called? I think it's called Hearts. It's like this crazy, like post-apocalyptic fantasy setting where like there's like this massive city, and then there's like the underground from the city, and there's something deep within it that like is obviously super evil, and everything's super gritty, and it has like this feel of like Bloodborne.
Yes, Heart. A friend of mine is constantly talking about that, and yes. The spin-off of Spire.
Oh, okay, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it's crazy. There's like the character classes are nuts. They're all creepy and terrible. But it was awesome because I've never played in a game like that before. But in all honesty, it was my first time playing a game. And if it's your first time playing a tabletop RPG, my advice, or at least the GM tip of the week, or I guess it would be a player tip of the week, is just kind of go with it. If the GM who's running the game for you is kind of alluding to something, just don't feel like you don't want to get stuck in. Like just experience everything. Something bad happens to your character, at least you know, right? But like you gotta take those risks and you gotta jump in. And if your GM is like trying to like has content prepared and be like, oh yeah, by the way, there's this really okay, there was just like the experience would be like that happened was, we were just trying to run away from a bunch of crows who were trying to kill us, in the tunnels or whatever. And we came across this like living cave with a bunch of bodies shoved into it. And everybody was like, yeah, we should probably leave. But I was like, but hey, man, when are we ever going to go experience this random cave with bodies in it? Like, you only get to do this kind of stuff kind of once, right? So that's my GM tip of the week. If you're playing a new game you never played before, push your boundaries, man. Just go get messed up. Because I think that everyone's first character is good, but everyone's second character is way better.
Also, just from the GM end of that, to be frank, a lot of the time I will see players go, I want to get involved in this, and it'll be a better idea than what I had for the session anyway.
Yeah. Just go in and see what happens. I mean, I think that a lot of times people don't take a lot of risks because they like the character, but they're heroes, right? you got to go and do heroic things.
I mean, yeah, I don't know that I have anything to really add to that. I think that's useful advice on both ends. Okay.
Right, cool.
So I really want to get into talking about this book right now.
That would be nice.
I want to get this discussion flowing. So let us first introduce our guest, Ikiryo. Let's just talk. I guess we can talk about. Maybe you can talk about your experience with tabletop RPGs and writing up top, and who you are as a person. How much you want to talk about that, or your other experience with game development.
Sure thing. I'm actually a relatively new developer. The two people I'm working with on this project have got a fair bit of experience, but I was actually brought into this project just when it started, when Cybom came up to me pretty much out of nowhere and went, hey, do you want to be part of a Lancer project? And I went, yeah, okay. Turns out he and Vox, the two people I'm working on with this project, have prior experience doing Pathfinder third-party work.
Okay, cool.
And at one point, I had just hurled a spreadsheet full of numbers for a game at Sai because they were doing some testing, and he just remembered that and went, "Oh, that's Icky. Icky's good at numbers. Icky seems to know what this Lancer thing is. I should talk to Icky."
Nice.
Nice.
I wish I had some more impressive story, but I just threw a spreadsheet at a man's head.
I mean, that's still a good story. That's something that I like about this community is how, especially third-party people, like how you could just be talking to someone about something you're into, send them some information about something you like or something that they relate to, and then when people are working on projects, they remember, oh, hey, I had a great conversation with this person. They were knowledgeable about this topic or whatever. What can we work on together? What can we create together? And then you make something that's, greater than the sum of its parts, right? Something greater than an individual could have made on their own, just from having that prior connection. Yeah,
and that's a lot of what Liminal Space is. Like, I have plenty of experience with Lancer, but I don't have a wholly previous publishing experience, which Cybom and Vox both do have. And, Vox brings incredible storytelling to the table. Cybom is incredible at math, and I know the system well. And by our powers combined, we have a supplement.
Nice. That's awesome.
Exactly. That's what's great about these sort of projects. Let's just jump right into it, unless there's something else you want to go over. Let's just jump right into the description of this thing. Like, what exactly is the Field Guide to Liminal Space?
Okay. So Field Guide to Liminal Space is an expansion to the Lancer system, as has been mentioned previously. But the idea behind Field Guide to Liminal Space isn't to cover a specific area, but to cover a specific theme that happens in games. Liminal spaces are places that are between other spaces. So a doorway is a liminal space, but so would say a revolution. A revolution is a liminal space because it is a transition between the previous order and the new order. Field Guide Liminal Space is a supplement that is about playing in places that are under change.
Okay. I see it. That's cool.
So,
Interesting.
What kind of changes do you mean? All sorts of revolutions? Do you mean people building up their own organizations and things like that? Because they're
not just revolutions, but also internal changes. Mm-hmm. So, for example, one of our groups is Downfall Group. They are a spy organization, but they're a spy organization that has come to the conclusion that their employers are a net negative on the world around them. So they are making the transition from being, the dogs on a leash of a company to becoming an independent group of their own. They're not having a direct bloody revolution, but they are undergoing changes.
Okay. So it's kind of like so I'm guessing that, I see there's also Magnum Opus and Marley Oz and Silver. I'm assuming that's the same themes run through those.
Yes, all three of them are in some way under pressure to change, but all three of them are doing it in very different ways. Marley Oz and Silver are a debt relief company that have slowly become big enough to actually qualify as one of the mega corporations, and they're realizing that perhaps they don't want to be a giant corporation because that involves surgically removing your soul. And they are in a situation where they are on the cusp of becoming something and they're not sure they want to be that thing.
Okay, cool. I feel like there's obviously, there will probably be people in that corporation that would want the change, and there's that nice internal conflict that you're looking for, right?
Oh, yes. One of the big themes we work with is that the future is undiscovered and nobody has the same vision for it as anyone else. So there is an awful lot of competition among whose vision of the future is going to be the one that comes to light.
That's good. I mean, I that's already present in the, I guess, the Lancer at large, idea of powers just trying to be the one on top all the time, right? So That's cool. I mean, I'm digging it. Just that alone gets me excited.
Also, to look at it from a little bit of a less philosophy end and more of a just GM running end, players tend to mostly turn up to places that are a bit unstable. There is very rarely a game where it is, yep, everything is normal, nothing weird is happening, player characters are here for some reason.
Yeah, right. It would be boring. That would just be like, regular life. And, if you show up a badass space mech pilot and your services aren't needed, then I guess you just leave, right?
Just on vacation or something.
Yeah, I would argue even though I would give my characters vacation, it's not actually vacation. It's work still. But, so... No, it's cool. I mean, definitely the players would be agents of change, and that's the reason why they show up, right? Because they are the heroes or the villains, depending on which side you're on.
Yeah, players are agents of change, but, they're not the only ones who are affected by that change, and that's something we sort of wanted to get across. The person who's guiding the ship still has to deal with the fact that they're guiding a ship full of people.
Right. So is that the sort of thing that you're expecting like players and GMs to be able to experience through this? Is just having a story that by the end of it something significant will be different in regards to either the people they know or the companies they know or the world or the setting itself?
Very much so. We've got 3 flashpoints, which are Lance's versions of, here is an introduction to a story. And all 3 of them are situations that are more than a bit unstable. And it is up to some degree, the players to decide in what way they fall down.
Okay, so that's something I was wondering is like, because this seems like a really great way to let players feel like they affect change in a certain world, and I think that's something that a lot of people really look forward to in their RPG games. They want to feel like whatever they do has impact, and I think it's interesting to have a supplement that focuses specifically on that sort of thing.
Very much, and part of it is also the part that actually ties most into the bit that I worked on, Magnum Opus Interstellar, is the after effects of change. Marlioz and Silver and Downfall Group are in the middle of major changes. Magnum Opus Interstellar are a much longer lasting group, and in their case, they are having the repercussions of decisions they've made in the past come back to haunt them.
Okay. So would you describe as like Downfall Group being like the early stages, the beginnings of change, like that revolutionary first actions kind of stage of a thing, and then Marlioz is like the middle, and Magnum Opus is like it's at the end of it, or maybe like it's starting another. It's at the end of being stable, and it's another precipice of revolutions happening. That kind of cycle. Very
much so. Downfall Group's biggest chance for things to just fall apart is for them to let that revolutionary spirit die, while on the other end, Magnum Opus Interstellar is having some change forced upon them because of the repercussions coming back to haunt them, and the biggest problem that could happen there is them lashing out too hard in an attempt to not change.
I see. Okay, cool. I mean, I'm just looking at the I guess the logos, the corporate logos of them, and even just the idea of like cycles and all the curved things. While like Downfall is more direction, right? There's more of a direction to it. There's definitely like a up, a top, and a down. While like Marlioz and Silver has a crack down the middle, so it's like showing that there's tension between two sides. And like Magnum Opus is like more put together, but they're just so multifaceted, right? So it's like even in the way that you guys are presenting it from just a logo, you can definitely have like such a strong feel of what these corporate states are about.
Yeah, and I really have to give way so much credit to the artist who actually did those logos, Crixler. We spoke to them, and they really helped get the themes of the companies into the logos.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, it comes through. It's great. I'm a sucker for good art direction. So.
Yeah, speaking of, you did send over some art, which I'll flash on screen now if you're watching on YouTube. If you want to like introduce the artist who also did some of those pieces, some of these splash images.
Okay, so those splash pages were done by one of our in-house, for a value of in-house. We're working with a few artists. Mm-hmm. But the one in that case was Moidera, and they have just done fantastic art when it comes to getting across some emotion and just a feel of momentum.
Yeah, looking at the Wrath art especially, you can really feel the impact of that. And the Morgana art really caught my eye there.
So about the Morgana art, that literally part of the description when I was working with Moidera was make this thing look like a Final Fantasy villain.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah, it really, and I was looking at the descriptions on your Kickstarter as well, which, for our listeners will be linked below. For Magnum Opus especially, like that whole techno mysticism thing, I mean, that's just like, or techno sorcery, I guess. That just really, really got my interest. I think that's really like a really cool concept.
Well, part of it is Lancer has a concept called paracausality, stuff that just defies our current understanding of physics. Mm-hmm. If you're a researcher who's trying to research paracausality, where do you even start? You've got a thing that defies the known laws, and you need to work on it. In the case of Magnum Opus, they went, okay, well, I guess if the traditional methods are not working, let's see if there's any hints from past mysticism or just copious amounts of drugs to give us ideas.
True. Nice. Just, expanding the mind will expand space, too, at the same time, right?
There is expressly a line in the description for Magnum Opus's space station that they probably train more psychonauts than cosmonauts.
Nice.
Yeah, like some of the concepts in here, like they border on the ideas of magic. That's like, I don't know. It just really like checks a lot of boxes for me. I'm really excited to like get a look at that.
I think it's awesome that Lancer has that kind of range, right, where you can have your real robots if you wanted to, with just guns and slapping people with big metal rods or whatever, and then you could have like the cool super sci-fi stuff where you are fighting Final Fantasy bosses and things like that, right?
Yeah, part of it is my personal dislike for sort of hard categories of a lot of people categorize science fiction and fantasy as different things, but for the longest time they weren't, and I don't think they need to be.
Yeah,
I agree with you. I just think that a lot of fantasy draws from the past, and a lot of science fiction draws from the future. So inherently, that's like the thing people have to like get in their heads is that like your past influences your future, and your future can influence how you view the past, and that's the whole thing. Right? So you can have like fantasy sci-fi together, and it all works, and I like that. It's gray and you can do whatever you want.
But yeah, we tried to get a good mix of them. Marlios and Silver are much more on the real robot end, while we have Downfall Group that's somewhere in the middle, and then there's Magnum Opus, who just defy the concept of real robots.
How does it work? We don't know. You just flip the switch and it's on.
Choose your weapon. We have a gun, a sniper rifle, summoning demons. God damn it, Magnum Opus.
Yeah, accessing a blink station that fell in a black hole, I believe.
Yes, the original Agartha station, which is like, yeah, that thing should not be summonable, and even if it was summonable, it is currently full of some horrible entity we can't even comprehend. Let's summon part of it.
Nice.
Yeah, I just love the effect of it, just like dropping a black hole on someone, and then if they're in a bad position, they might just poof out of there.
Yeah. Also, please ignore the fact that that is an entirely legally distinct Pokeball.
No affiliation to Game Freak at all.
Nice. Yeah, no, we won't tell anybody.
I never said I was creative.
Yeah.
Well, so something I'm wondering then is like, how do you? I mean, I guess we talked about this a bit before, just ahead of the show, was just getting GMs into the concepts and sort of communicating them through game mechanics, because like from my understanding when it comes to writing certain things for tabletop RPGs is like you'll come in with a concept and then you have to figure out, well, how do I make this work in a way that works for playing with it? Like if you want to create a certain feel, how do you translate that into game mechanics? So when someone's rolling their dice or using a certain move or attack or whatever, like how does it fit into the space? And I'm just sort of wondering like how you bridge the gap between those things.
Okay, so on a design front, we tried to bridge the gap by making there be a very strong connection with the thematics of each of the things we built, and also how they play. So, for example, Magnum Opus has a lot of just, I declare this happens effects. But they're also highly limited in how often you get them. Like, for example, the Ptolemy's core power is the, what's it called? Oh, damn. The Dissection Ray. And it is just point at a guy. He takes 1 structure damage. No ifs, no buts, he damn well takes it. And that is sort of the attempt to get across the feel that an effect is both powerful, but also something you can't do too much. You want something to feel like it's a powerful weapon, but you also want it to feel like you're playing with some really dangerous things you maybe shouldn't be playing with.
Right, where like, you know, you handed someone like a handheld nuke and be like, well, don't shoot yourself.
There is an element of that. While, for example, to get across the more scrappy underdog end of Marley Olsen Silver, every single Marley Olsen Silver mech has some form of survival tool to it. They don't all work the same, but every single one of them has a I'm down but not out effect.
Oh, okay, so it's like they last a little bit longer on the battlefield kind of thing?
Yeah, they just don't stop moving.
Okay. I mean, I like that. I'm a big fan of you know, that's the whole thing about giant robots, right? You could like lose your harm and still keep chugging along. Like, who cares if the cockpit's exposed? You're just gonna go smash some stuff, right?
While Downfall Group, to sort of get across their both the sin feel, because all of their stuff is named after the 7 deadly sins. To go with the sin feel of their naming convention, every single one of their mechs has a catastrophic downside, but it uses that to get a lot of upsides as well. For example, the Sloth is slowed, and it cannot ever stop being slowed. But as a result, it will never stop moving, it will never stop advancing, and it is a very tough bastard.
Nice. Okay, cool. I like the idea of just it's not a fast object, but it's unstoppable. Like, you just literally can't slow it down. Nice. I like it a lot.
On the GM front, the book has quite a few NPCs, and all of them are sort of designed to help give players a feel for them, not just as they are in the terms of a tactical fight, but what they are in terms of the setting around them.
Okay.
For example, one of them is the Strikebreaker template. The Strikebreaker NPC. And the Strikebreaker is supposed to be a big corporate leg breaker that is, you know, there to crush rebellions and put down anyone who's, you know, protesting or anything like that.
Right.
And the Strikebreaker uses a bit of a wrestling idea of heel heat, where it will be something players hate but they hate in a way they really want to see it get its face smashed in, rather than, say, something they hate that they never want to see again.
Right. Versus, yeah, so it's like, you want to keep beating them up. So every time one shows up, you're like, finally, I get to do this one more time, right?
Yeah, and so we tried to incorporate that because it really gives them the feel of this is someone that the players won't particularly like, either as an enemy or with their in-universe role.
Mm-hmm.
So do you include sort of I guess personality in their tactics as well?
Yes. We've done our best to try and incorporate as much personality as possible. Obviously, you can reflavor basically anything you want, but as I said near the start of this, I am a huge person for synergy of rules and fluff. So I try to make it so that there's a lot of personality expressed through the rules themselves.
Nice. So it has a strong identity, right? All of its abilities are you can easily pair a voice or a face with it and be like, this is this guy, and everyone would be like, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, for one of them, the Warden is a big knightly bodyguard mech. Mm. And every time you attack the person it's guarding, it gets a free reload of its very scary weapon.
Oh.
Because you have angered it, you have hurt its friend, it is going to kick your ass now.
True. Yeah. That's cool. That's cool. I like the you gotta take down the bodyguard so you can actually get to the thing that's protecting. I like it a lot.
Yeah, that's always one of the things that always seemed like the hardest thing to do. Is just making sure that when the NPC does something, it fits that character, not just mechanically, but as their personality as well. Because it's still you're still at the core of an RPG, you're still creating a narrative.
Yeah, and I have a personal dislike for any time when an NPC can sort of just be boiled down to here is how much health it has, here is how much damage it does. That is more or less the end of the NPC.
Yeah. Because, it just, when you just do that, then it's kind of just a game, and there's people that can work for, I don't want to knock that too much, but yeah, I don't really enjoy that either. If I'm going to attack something, I want to have a reason for it. Or at least feel good about it.
That, and honestly, it gives just a lot more room for interesting mechanics if you try and go, how do I make this thematic thing feel right as a game rule?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you approach it theme first and then apply the mechanics to it, right?
Generally, yes. Sometimes I will sit there and go, I want to play in this area. Let's see if I can do that.
Fair.
For example, the Magnum Opus Solomon was literally just me going, is there still design space for another drone mech once, the Hydra from the core book exists? Can I work out a drone mech that works as a drone mech without just sitting entirely in the same area as the Hydra?
Yeah, I always kind of wonder that with all of the, several, all the Lancer supplements are great that I've read. They've all been really interesting. But, there's only so much design space for a concept, right? Like a thing with a big stick, it's going to be kind of similar to another thing with a big stick, right? How do you navigate that?
It's a tricky area, and to be frank, a lot of it involves playtesting, where we find out if the people like what we're putting out. We have scrapped quite a few things, not because they were mechanically bad, but because players went, this doesn't really feel interesting, or, this just feels like such and such.
Right. So if there's already a similar thing that's happening in the core book, then it's probably not useful to just repeat it, right?
Yeah, which is why you will generally find that supplements tend to play in some weird areas. Mm-hmm. Because the core book, and this is not remotely a knock to the core books tend to play in the standard area the game was designed around. They don't tend to work into weirder areas because the core book is supposed to be the most accessible, most usable version of the book.
Right, yeah, it's your stable starting point where then you can branch off to, whatever other thing you like or whatever other thing you want to explore, right?
Like, for example, one of the core bonuses in Liminal Space is, well, Magnum Opus, they build blink gates. They are really good at supply lines. At the start of every mission, you just get a free set of supplies that you can roll for.
That's pretty cool. That's kind of useful too, because I think a lot of times players don't remember to prepare anything for combat or for a mission. They just like, yeah, let's go, and then they're like, oh shit, we probably should have planned.
And the core book does actually have a reserve system. The players can seek out stuff within it.
Ooh, okay.
But none of the core book mechs really directly interact with that. It's a little bit of a supplemental thing. Mm-hmm. Which gave room for Magnum Opus to go as a core bonus. Yeah, have a bonus one of those every single mission.
Nice. Yeah, I like it also has the feel of, we're at the game a little bit longer than the rest of the corporate states in the book or the companies in the book. So we already established, right? So it's like when you partner with us, it's like you know what you're gonna get.
Entertainingly, Magnum Opus are older than one of the core book main factions.
Okay.
Cool. Harrison Armory, if you actually read the timeline, they're remarkably new as a faction. They're huge, but they're incredibly new.
I think they're only 500 years old, which by, like ISBN standpoints, it's just like they're a big baby. Right?
They have come out of, they spun off from Secom, and they just almost instantly became a major faction.
Right. Well, it's like the idea of like a company tanking, but all the leaders are just like, okay, we'll just take the money and go make something else. Pretty much.
Yep. We'll build our own Secom.
Yeah, we'll do it over here with
with Blackjack and Shermans.
Nice. Yes. Still think the Sherman is a fine piece of machine. We'll always play Sherman. The thing just deletes people when it wants to. So I get it. But I don't know. I feel like Harrison Armory is always the bad guy. Like no matter what, they're just doing something wrong.
There is an element of that.
Always. So in terms of like all of the companies that they're in the book, how do they relate to like the other corporate states and other entities in Lancer?
Well, Downfall Group is probably the biggest one here, because Downfall Group are actually an ISPN spin-off.
Right.
Downfall Group was originally a ISPN, intelligence operation. They were given a lot of money to do competition research, to steal information from people, to plant data that, look, these guys are totally pirates. That's why it's okay for us to go beat the crap out of them. Mm-hmm. And their most recent leadership has sort of gone, maybe ISPN are not good people. Maybe we shouldn't be working for them.
I don't know. That's so funny. They're the comedic, like the over-exaggerated businessman yelling at like how they're down 5 points on the boardroom. Like,
yeah, right. It's entirely that if the guy was also firing a cannon at the same time.
Just blow it up and we'll just move on. It's definitely I get it. I love that the I guess the corporate states in Lancer, they're always kind of good, but they're always really bad at the same time. Like it's always like, we have this cool mech, or they did this cool research, or we got your shit on time, but we also probably murdered a lot of people, halfway across the galaxy, but you don't need to know that.
Generally the way that I've always described the Lancer companies is all of the companies are bad, but the people who work for those companies are not necessarily bad.
Yes, totally agree. I think we mentioned a lot of time how Lancer's a game about people, and it definitely mirrors like real world a lot. So not every corporations sometimes could be bad. I mean, majority of the time they're not good, but the people who work there are usually good people.
A lot of and generally the people working for a corporation are just people trying to make a living, which is what Marlios and Silver focuses a lot on. Marlios and Silver are a debt relief company. Their focus is basically trying to get people out of large debts that are forcing them to work for various other corporations.
Okay, so they're kind of positioned as like the good guys, essentially, right? They'll show up in a bad situation and try and make it
our
better.
3 corps, Marlios and Silver are by far the most white hat.
Okay.
though that also ties into their issue where they are very much in danger of becoming not that as they become more of a big corporation themselves.
Right. Where it's less about like helping everybody as best they can and more about, making the best, like making strategic decisions to be the best, right? Kind of.
Yeah, it's one of those things of they want to help people, but helping people costs money. So sometimes you've got to do things that get money, and you just got to make sure you don't only focus on the things that get money.
Nice, interesting. I like that.
Yeah. So I do also really want to talk about like Kickstarter stuff in general as well.
Of course.
Because that's something that I think people might be into, especially other people who might be like wanting to write something or wanting to get on Kickstarter and stuff. So I guess we could just talk about the process itself and like, how do you build an audience on Kickstarter? How do you get started there?
To be frank, I think a lot of getting started on Kickstarter starts long before you get on Kickstarter, weirdly enough. So for Liminal Space, we have been working on this project for close to 2 years at this point. But a lot of that, we've been trying to build up people who are interested in it well before we went to the Kickstarter itself. So, we talked to people on the Lancer Discord. I have a Twitter that I post a lot of art from Liminal Space whenever it gets done by the artists.
All right.
And we just try and stay invested in communities that are interested in the game. Try to become a name people recognize, because there are so many games on Kickstarter that if you go to Kickstarter without any idea about how to get people's eyes on you, you're probably not going to get that much attention.
Yeah, no, I mean it's the same thing with like indie game development and stuff like that, where you want to get eyes on what you're putting out there before you put like a payment page out there, before you have it on a storefront or a shop or a Kickstarter or anything like that, if you want to build that audience.
And that is a big thing we did with Liminal Space. We have been running for, I think, about a year at this point, maybe a little bit longer. We've been running an open beta test for Liminal Space. So for over a year, people have been able to just freely play with all of the rules that are coming out for Liminal Space. So that way people know what we're producing, they can give us good feedback, and they can just get the idea that, oh, Liminal Space is a cool thing, I've enjoyed playing with it, I will talk to my friends about it.
Alright, and then it gives you like the two benefits of, not only do you have like the play testing that you can figure things out with, you also have the benefit of word of mouth and everything like that.
Yes, a major problem I've noticed in homebrew communities, and I am very guilty of this myself at times, is to just sort of privately tinker with something until it's perfect, which will never happen. Nothing will ever be truly perfect. But the biggest advice I can really give to people is don't wait until you've got a Kickstarter out. Get people's attention on it, get people to enjoy what you're making before you go for money with it.
Yeah, that's some
That
solid
makes sense,
advice.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't even know if whatever you're doing is good, right? So like, you got to get eyes on it and get feedback and get people excited about it before you ask them for money.
Yes, and I am incredibly grateful to the Lancer community for this, because they have been just endlessly supportive for, hey, I like this, but maybe this rule doesn't quite work right, and I will go, oh, damn it, I guess I'm going to rewrite this to see if I can get it to work a bit better. Because The other thing I can safely say, the worst person in the entire world to give advice about something is the person who made it. You don't see your own problems, or you over-focus on what you think is a problem, but everyone else just doesn't even pay attention to. Get things out there, get people looking at it, get people commenting on it, and it will do more for your design process and more for the chance of you having a good product at the end than any amount of just sitting there quietly poking at it.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I wanted to talk about, because I think people might have an assumption that if you just put something good out there, it will inherently get eyes on it. And that's not always the case. I'm sure there's millions of good things out there that people have spent a lot of time on, but they didn't really talk about them. And then when they just put it out there, it's just this one blink of here's this thing, and then nothing else. And then there's no audience for it.
Yeah, and I think that is a strength for putting your stuff out there before it's ready so that people can look at it. Because I think there is a lot more interest people have in, I'm developing this, do you have any thoughts, than just, I have a thing.
Mm-hmm.
It makes it more of an engaging process.
Yeah. I think it's cool if someone's working on a project and you gave some advice and it made it into the final product. That feels like you're a part of it, right? You're a part of the process, and I think that's something you can't really replicate.
Yeah, and to be frank, the Lancer community is a big part of the process because they have pretty consistently gone, Icky, no, this ain't working.
Nice.
Yeah, that's another thing I like about this community, is that it's kind of niche, so it's kind of small, but there's still a lot of activity and interaction within it. So people who are working on these things, they're all very large and noticeable within the community as compared to something larger like D&D and Pathfinder or whatever, where you can make your third-party stuff, but it's less likely to get noticed among the sea of other things like that.
Yeah, and that, I must admit, I don't really know what I'd do if I was developing my own game from scratch. I have nothing but kind thoughts and hopes, but my work has almost entirely been, I am developing something for a game that has at least somewhat an established fan base. And that established fan base is just so much of part of my design process.
Yeah, especially working with that fan base. I think that's great. So something else that I think people might be wondering when it comes to, I guess, Kickstarter specifically, is setting goals and pledge levels and things like that. How do you measure? I know most things would be we can only do this if we have the budget for it, so this goal has to be at a certain budget. Is that what the majority of it is based on?
Yes, but I feel like there is a tendency for Kickstarters to either overdo it or underdo it, because a lot of Kickstarters tend to go, well, here is the amount that it would require for us to make no profit but also have it done. And they might reach that, and that'll be it, and they'll have their thing out there, but they won't have really made anything of it. I feel like there is a level that people need to set where it's, hi, this is the level where we can have our thing out there and also have our time paid back. Because, things don't come out of nowhere.
Yeah,
the product, the thing you're putting up on Kickstarter, that is hours and hours of your life you've spent on it. And while I am incredibly proud of what Liminal Space is, there's also an element of, you should set your base level to be what you can say, I got this done, I, was fairly compensated for my work, and I am happy even if it gets no further than this.
Yeah, I totally get that. I mean, always my baseline is pay anyone who's making games well, right? It's a lot more work than anyone can ever conceive, and there's tons of passion in it, and people should just get paid what they deserve, right? So
yeah, and that's something I'm I'm happy with the design work I've done with Liminal Space, but the thing I'm probably most proud of with Liminal Space is the fact that we have made sure that all of the artists working on our thing have been fairly compensated, because there are so many games and projects out there that they go, oh yeah, how small an amount of money can I get this artist to be paid for it?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I totally get that. And, you know, it's tough, man, because, like, you want to, like, I always say, like, I will spend my money on the things that I want to support, right? That's how I show, I think, my best support for it. It's like, I'm gonna try and give you my money to use because I really believe in you. So I think that we should always support artists. We always should support any sort of artistic endeavor. If you really believe in it, like, you gotta show up, right? And make sure those people are compensated and paid, because obviously the you know, I think the art community is woefully underpaid all the time.
Yeah.
Oh yes, and like, I've shown you some of the art for Liminal Space. If it wasn't for the artists, we would not have that sort of visceral feeling people will get looking at our book, and that probably does more to sell it to people than every single word I've written.
Yeah, I mean, like, the art isn't just, like, page filler in the book. It's part of the marketing. It's part of the explaining, like, what this thing is. It's part of what gets eyes on everything. Like, it has so many multiple uses that, I think we're all in agreement. Artists should be compensated.
Right? Yeah, it's like a part of the fantasy. Like, I don't think that I would be so excited about half the things in, like, tabletop RPGs if there wasn't like a picture associated with it, to really kind of solidify what the words or mechanics are trying to explain, right? Like,
yeah, and like, even small things can be something that just really gets people's attention. To use a core book Lancer example, I don't think anyone would be quite as interested in the Pegasus if it wasn't this horrible abomination skittering its way across the ground towards people.
Yeah, and all those fingers. The gun.
Too
face.
many fingers.
Too many fingers. Why is his face a gun?
Yeah, and that sort of thing just does so much. Mm-hmm. Which is another thing I feel like is probably a good thing if you're going to Kickstarter. Make sure you've got some art to start. Mm-hmm. While you will definitely, probably want to get more art along the way, you want to have something to get people to look at and go, ooh, that's a cool thing. I want to see more of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people who will go to a Kickstarter page and they'll, like, scroll through it, and they might just scroll past, like, all the text and stuff. But if they see, like, an art piece, they'll slow down and appreciate that and wonder, well, what is this? And then what is this describing? And then actually, like, delve into the aspects of it.
Yeah, and to go back to the topic of Kickstarters and goals, mm-hmm. A big thing, like, a lot of people have said it, and it is good advice: do not, for the love of God, overpromise with your stretch goals. Basically, the idea is that a stretch goal should be something you can deliver without it, consuming the entire extra money you got to reach that stretch goal. Right. And a lot of Kickstarters do have that problem where they promise something that it's big and impressive, but it also means that they have basically gotten to that stretch goal and gotten nothing out of it except extra work.
So, like,
makes sense.
Like a budget kind of thing? Like, they set the budget too low for that compared to, like, the gap from the previous goal?
Yeah, not just that, but also they start to promise big, impressive things. Like, oh yeah, we'll have a program that helps you play this game. Things that are in and of themselves an extra project. Like, for example, with our Kickstarter, one of our big goals is, if we get far enough, we're going to add a fourth company to it, Genco. The thing, though, is Genco is written. Genco was a personal project of one of our people. So the add-on as a stretch goal isn't, oh yes, we are going to spend an extra 300 hours writing and testing this. It's, no, this goal will allow us to expand the printing costs to add it to the book and, add an extra number of pages.
So it's like literally like we have to pay the printer more to make the book bigger. This
Yeah.
is what the stretch goal is for, to actually fit
Yeah,
in.
and that, I think, is a good thing to do with your stretch goals, because in design, there will be a ton of things you just make, and you might not necessarily go, this is not something I'm going to put in the book. But those things do often make good stretch goals. For example, when we were making Liminal Space, one thing we wanted to do was to sort of get an understanding of each other's work. We wanted to make sure that all three of us could, opine on any of the three companies, their themes, and what sort of design areas they play in. So in order to do that, we set ourselves a little bit of a task that wasn't really related to the project itself, but more just a get into each other's heads, where each of us would make a mech, an alternate mech for each of those companies.
Oh, okay. Okay, so like a little bit of like, let me get into your shoes and see if we can, put our things together, right? Like use your design and my ideas and make something new.
Yeah, so for example, I ended up as a result writing the downfall group Justice, which is an alternate of the Wrath. And that was not designed at the time for the Kickstarter. That was designed in order to help it go, does Iki understand downfall group?
Okay.
But at the same time, people like extra things. And there is no shame in going, well, it's written, let's see if we can get this thing, if we get far enough, we'll polish it to a print level.
Okay. And then the goal is just like paying for those pages or art or anything else you might need to actually get it out.
Yeah, paying for the time test, a bit of time for play testing it, and to just, for example, getting new art for it, and getting it added to the book.
Right.
Okay.
And I feel like that is stretch goals. They should definitely be something people want to see, but as a creator, that doesn't mean that they should be worth 100% of the extra money that went to the stretch goal. You should assume that if you are doing better in your stretch goals, that you are also going to be compensated for it.
Right. So because it sounds like you also have to figure like how much time things take to set like a price for your goals. Like you have to figure out, well, this is going to take so much hours, so that should also be factored in. Like how in general do you figure that out? Is that part of your like before Kickstarter process in your general design work when you're playtesting and things like that? Do you just try to get a sense of, it took me X amount of time to do this, so if I measure that per hour, that's Y cost per hour?
Honestly, no. To be frank, a lot of it was more working out what the outgoing costs would be, working out how much would be left after those outgoing costs, and go, am I happy with this?
Oh, okay.
I really wish there was a more detailed formula for it, but a lot of it is just, am I happy with what would be left afterwards?
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, that's still a formula in a way. I guess I was thinking of a more like, here's the exact number kind of thing. But it's more like, what it's going to cost to do this project in the way you're describing it at each step. So with what's left over, managing everything else, is that something you're happy with?
Yeah. And I feel like that is, like, I am 100% someone who, supports art for the sake of art. But at the same time, I also support, if someone is doing work, they should probably be compensated for it fairly. Or at least, to a degree that they are happy with.
Right.
Yeah.
You're just like a little more in control of that with a Kickstarter.
Yeah, and another, on that topic, another thing on top of stretch goals is that of actual tiers. And tiers are a very tricky thing to work out for Kickstarter because, you know, there's a temptation to go, what fancy exotic thing can we add? You know, what physical object can we add to this tier? And I don't think that's always the best option, because if you look at the Liminal Space Kickstarter, most of our extra tiers are not about getting an extra physical object. There is the get a physical book tier, but most of our tiers are about, hey, do you want to have something you've made be part of this? So there is tiers for, hey, do you want to add an organization to this massive space station? Or do you want to have art of one of your characters in the book?
Right. Just like contributing to the book as well, but not like an extra physical thing.
Yeah. And that is an area where it will not cause the people making it to go insane with all the extra work. But it's also something that so far it does seem to be valuable to the people who are paying it.
Yeah, because they want to be a part of it, right? Like, it's like they want to own the book, play in the system, but also contribute to it in some meaningful way.
Yeah,
right?
Like, for example, one of our tiers is we had 3 open for put your mech on the back cover, because our back cover is being drawn and it is a big fight scene.
Ah, okay.
And we went, hey, what if we let people put their character in that fight scene?
Ah, nice.
And it's been very popular. People have liked it. And I don't know, there's a tendency when people talk about Kickstarters to bring it in terms of whales and stuff like that, but I don't personally like that. I believe that people are willing to pay for something they consider a good investment and just a good bit of fun. I have personally put plenty of money to Kickstarters where I got to define a little piece of the setting because that brought me joy.
Yeah, for sure. To be honest with you, I think I mentioned it before on the podcast where like I Kickstarted Lancer, right? But then I also bought the book again because I was so impressed. I was like, listen, I missed out on the Kickstarter goal to give you more money. I'm going to give you more money right now. Because honestly, it was so good, and it brought me so much joy that I just wanted to do a little bit extra, right? Than just owning the book. So I get it, and I actually really think that Liminal Space's tiers are awesome. I mean, the whole idea of having my own mech in a fight scene in like hundreds of copies of a book, that sounds so cool. It's just fucking cool, man. Like,
and that is what we wanted to go for. We wanted to go for something where it would not cause anyone working on it to go insane, but it would also be something that the people paying for it felt was worth putting money to. We don't want to scam anyone. We don't want to we don't want to overwork ourselves to death because we've overpromised on tiers.
Yeah.
Like, for example, we only have a single tier that is a massive amount of extra work. And that is our absolute top tier, where you work with Iki to help design an NPC. A full-on NPC frame players can fight. And that is our highest tier because that is going to be many hours of Iki work.
Right, that makes sense. I mean, I think and the way you could also think about it too, it's like, you know, you're paying for this tier. You're getting a little skin in the game to have more control over what you get at the final end product, right? Like either way, even if you had that idea of making an NPC, you could spend $500 or whatever it is to playtest it, to get art, to do everything, and then publish it yourself. But instead of, you know, you doing all that by yourself, you have the awesome luxury of working with Iki to do it with you, right?
and to be fair, the 2 I've been asked to design, I'm very much enjoying working on them.
Exactly, right? So, you know, I think it's you know, I should say this. It's like the idea of like, you know, you're gonna go build a shed by yourself, or you can, you know, buy a prefab shed, or go pay somebody to come help you build a shed. It's all this. You get the shed done in the end. but which one's more enjoyable or whatever, right? Whatever you want to do, like,
But
that kind of thing.
overall, my advice for Kickstarters is, you're a human being. Do not try and promise this. Do not promise the moon to people, because not only will you hurt yourself in the process, you will also hurt the people who've become invested in your Kickstarter, because you will deliver them a worse thing.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, just like get a sense of what you are capable of delivering, what that would cost you, and how you can manage that and what you'll have left over.
Yes, whenever you have a tier or a stretch goal, sit down and think about, okay, so if we hit this, what would it take us to deliver it? How much work would it be?
Yeah, like these can't just be like arbitrary numbers. Like even like the number of backers that are able to back a certain limited thing, that can't just be an arbitrary number.
For example, the design an NPC one, that is hard limited to 2, because more than 2 would drive Icky insane.
Right.
There just isn't enough for you to go around.
Look, we've been on this project for 2 years, and I have 18 NPCs. Two more over the course of a month and a half or something. More than that would be a bit much.
Yeah, and that's another thing where you have to get a sense of like how much work something is in your design process.
Yeah, because you are not a machine. You are a human, and by understanding your own limits, you're able to better work for the people who have trusted you with their money.
Mm-hmm. You did mention the concept of whales a moment ago, and I don't know if you wanted to like touch on that a bit, because like to me, I mean, I guess I don't know if our audience knows what that is, but it's just like the idea of like certain members of like someone who's paying for something like a game or whatever, like they'll overpay for it or pay more than usual than the average person would, and they like supplement the whole thing. And I don't know if that really applies too much for Kickstarter, because I haven't heard that personally, but I guess if you want to talk about that.
Okay, well, I think a big part of it is the idea of a whale is the overpaying part.
Mm-hmm.
I have before, heard people call high tiers for a Kickstarter whale tiers. Because that is the person who is paying, many times what the average person for it is paying. But I don't subscribe to that philosophy, because I want to believe that if someone is paying that much, they are getting what they paid for.
Yeah.
If something was a whale tier, it would be, you are paying this much, and, we are paying, pennies on the dollar in order to give you it.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think Kickstarters are more, like, personal than that. I guess that's my assumption about, like, the term whale. Like, I always see it as just being, like, more of a, you bought, like, a ton of loot boxes kind of thing in a video game.
Yeah, and that's sort of how it is. In a video game, the person buying those loot boxes, it doesn't take the person developing the game any extra work per loot box.
Right.
The entire system is automated. So I don't think it applies to Kickstarter, as long as you're not, running a scam. And if you're running a scam, well, stuff you, I don't want to give you advice anyway.
Yeah, I feel like that would at least hopefully that would fall apart before it gets too far. But I mean, I don't think I think there might occasionally be Kickstarter scams, but for the most part, I feel like most of them are legitimate.
Most of them are legitimate, though some do fail due to the previously mentioned over-promising. Mm-hmm. And I think that is the worst thing you can do, to be both entirely legitimate but also over-promise, because now you've hurt the people who backed you, but you've also strained yourself to hell in doing so, and nobody gets helped out of that.
Yeah. Like your actual project that you have passion for, like it'll have that stain on it.
Yeah, which is sort of why all of my advice has been very focused on know your limits, know what you can deliver. Mm-hmm. It's not the most flashy advice, I'll admit.
No, but I think that's still useful. I think that might be something people might not necessarily think of, because you can very easily go into something like this and think, well, if we get here, then we can do whatever we want without considering like time. Like, it might be easy to say like it'll cost this much, but maybe forget, oh, like it'll cost this much time as well.
Yeah, and that's something we're trying to avoid having trouble with Liminal Space, where we've already reached out to quite a few of the backers. So any backer who is getting a piece of art or working on an NPC, we're reaching out to them already so that we can hopefully get the ball rolling before the Kickstarter ends.
Right. So, you can, whatever you can get in front of, you want to do it, right? Like, you always want to just like, let's start now versus starting later.
Yeah. Although the other piece of advice on that, once your Kickstarter starts, do not keep refreshing it every 15 minutes. That was me for the first 3 days of this.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That would be, I mean, that would definitely be me. I mean, I do that with like YouTube videos. If it was like a Kickstarter, I don't think I would ever leave my computer chair.
Yeah, and that's just not psychologically healthy.
Yeah,
I have set a hard limit on myself of I do not check the Kickstarter more than like once in the morning and once in the evening.
That is
Sure.
That is actually also very good advice.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so yeah, I think that's a lot of useful information for people who might want to write something and try their own Kickstarters and stuff like that. Maybe some stuff you might not have thought of. We are not way over an hour, but we are over an hour. I do feel like we have more that we want to talk about, and maybe once the Kickstarter is over, we can maybe have you back on to talk about it a bit more.
Sure, I'd be more than happy to be on, or drag one of my colleagues on.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
For everybody listening, we will have a link to the Field Guide Liminal Space's Kickstarter below. By the time this episode is out, you should have well over a week still to contribute to the Kickstarter. It is finishing at the end of February, I believe.
27th, depending on your time zone.
Right. So plenty of time still to get in there. There's a few goals that are still available. There's plenty of tiers that are still available. So definitely go check out this project and back it. It's got some incredible artwork and a lot of really interesting mechs that I personally want to get my hands on. So I'm looking forward to this, and I'm looking forward to that LCP file.
If I might ask you a question.
Sure.
Which of the mechs are you most interested in getting your hands on?
So going back to... what was the name of it? It was the one that was posted in one of the updates. The Magnum Opus one.
The Solomon?
Yes. But just instantly when I read that, I was like... Everything that I read, I was like, oh, that's cool. Oh, that's cool. Oh, that's cool. It's just increasing in volume.
Yeah, the Solomon... I'm a fan of it, and it also runs into an area where design-wise I would slap myself for working on it if I hadn't already written it. Where its core power creates a unit that takes its own turn.
Yeah.
And that sort of action economy is just, no, you're playing with fire. But, core powers get a lot of room to do scary things.
Yeah, just summon a new thing on the field and just, I don't know, I like stuff that can mess up plans, even other players' plans sometimes. Definitely go check that out, and check out that update with the Solomon frame, because it's really fun. But we do have to wrap up, so is there anyone else that you want to give a quick shout out to? We are going to have a link to the Kickstarter below. I don't know if there's any other social media stuff you want us to link as well.
I'll probably get you to link my Twitter if that's okay.
No problem.
But as for shout-outs, mostly just the Lancer community as a whole. Like, they have done so much with just kind words, feedback, and telling me one of my designs was so bad it doesn't exist anymore. Which I am very grateful for. It was a bad design and should, go and die.
Yeah, and that's why you want to get feedback early when you're doing a project like this, because if you hadn't, you would just put it out there and...
There's a reason there's no Magnum Opus Merlin anymore.
Okay.
I'm a little curious about it now, but...
Maybe if you have me back, we're a bit out of time.
That's fair. So yeah, definitely we'll have the link below. Go check out Iki on Twitter as well. And of course, all the other people we love to give shout-outs to, the Field Guide to Fontanez. We'll have the Ikiryo page below. Celeste's Lancer NPC guides, we'll have a link to that Google Drive below. The Replay podcast, also check them out. It's a great show. And the Untold Stories Project, where I'm there every Monday playing Mutants and Masterminds in their weekly show. By the time this episode is out, they'll have announced this already, but by the time this episode is out, they're doing their big crossover, their second one between the Monday and Tuesday shows. So it'll be 1 GM and 10 players. So be sure to check out that chaos. And they're also starting a new show in March sometime, I think at the end of March, so be sure to check them out over there. And of course, our gaming streams, which should be back on regular schedule for now.
Nice.
And I keep forgetting to mention, but yeah, playing all sorts of RPGs that are going to take up a ton of time for 3 hours a week, so that's going to be going basically forever.
100%.
All right. Iki, thanks a ton for stopping by. I had a lot of fun talking about this. I'm really looking forward to it. And it was nice to hear some Kickstarter stuff that I hadn't personally thought of before. So hopefully it's useful information.
It was a pleasure being here. Thank you so much for having me.
Is there anything else we need to say before we sign off?
No, just give him the old send-off.
All right. Well, everybody out there, thanks for listening. And remember to keep on winning with dice. And we'll see you next week.
All right. Bye, guys.